we'll be speaking with our guests on what it is to have successful marriages and how productive can it be. You know, anytime we talk about marriage on this show, we are women saying from our perspective. Whenever we have a man like this, we hold you like this. Yes, we have a male perspective on this matter. So we'll be discussing marriage because he's a professor of communication at the Penn Atlantic University who studied family therapy at the North Central University, Scottsdale, Arizona, and practices marriage and family therapy in Lagos. Welcome with us, Professor Emevwo Biakolo. Welcome to the show, sir.
My pleasure.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
On the show. Now, see, we're going to take it in layers gradually. If we let us start from the first few years of marriage, when the hurdles come and the...
Should we start from the foundation?
The foundation. Let's start before they enter the marriage first. Okay, let's start from that. Before we enter the marriage, things are changing. You know, these days, back then, you look for a good man. Once he has a good family, good background, you give him a chance, you have a conversation, and then something can start. But today, nobody wants that foundation. They want somebody who's successful. You have a job, you have a house. You know, basics. You can't be talking to me if not to have a job. Exactly. Are you okay? So, is it that things have changed? Are the principles to start dating changed? Or what should we be looking for in settling down with a partner? Because even men now are not looking for liabilities. They'll tell you, you must have this, you must have that. They tell you before in the past, big man, if you just be a young girl, come the way you are, and you get married. But now the men too are expectant that you have something in the bank. What has changed? And do you think the foundation of marriage has also changed?
I'm not persuaded that there's been any real change.
Okay.
I don't think there's been any fundamental change. It's simply that in the past, some of these negotiations, the pre-marriage negotiations, were actually conducted by, say, parents and relatives. At the moment, what has actually changed is that the individuals themselves, say a woman, is involved in the negotiation, in making these choices, so that the whole trajectory, the way and manner that the choices are made have actually just simply changed. But now that the actual demands have changed. Because in the past, if your parents or your relatives wanted to give you away in marriage, they would be thinking, oh, is he going to be able to take care of my daughter? Does he have the resources? Does he? So all of those kinds of
negotiations. It's the same terms of engagement, but it's done by different parties.
Absolutely.
Now it is the parties involved
the
that are
parties
doing the
themselves who are making the decisions, yeah.
Interesting.
So, you know, back in the day, we always have people being matchmaked. Parents would, you know, go to see a family, see a budding flower, like they used to call it, then approach the parents. And, you know, the individuals involved are not even supposed to have any form of relationship before they finally get married. And it seemed like the marriage at the time worked, because the first few years is just that time where you're getting to know your partner, somebody you never knew before, you're becoming friends, and you go through the challenges. But now, we actually pick our spouses ourselves, and we're supposed to know them better. It's almost like the reverse. It's different from when our parents paired us up. What do you think is responsible for that difference, and that the fact that the marriages are no longer lasting?
Well, I would say a lot of cultural and social factors, because you see, the culture really determines to a great extent how we respond to, you know, in the marriage context, how we respond to our partners. For instance, in the past, marriage was supposed to be a lifelong project. I mean, you're all supposed to be together, whatever the difficulties. But, you know, the cultural dynamic has changed in such a way that people no longer think of marriage in that way. So the longevity of marriage, the fact that the marriage will last long or will not last long, actually depends a lot on what the culture and the society actually want, the expectations and the way that these expectations are met or not met. That's really what is happening. Because in the past, the cultural expectations are that you will be together. In some cases, of course, there were also divorce issues and separation issues. But they were less because the cultural and social expectations are such that people will stay together and work out their differences. But right now, with the cultural and social changes, people are no longer, you know, able to exercise those kinds of patience, examples of patience, because really, culturally, socially, it's more acceptable to divorce or to separate.
Ima.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about after marriages have been contracted, when the entire thing is settled. How to, because if you compare those days, I have seen the language of marriage be one of, let's say, head, daddy, and there's a mommy who's second in command. Sort of that, you know, when the bringing of ideas happen, it has to be by instruction. So the head will say, okay, I am the head of this family. I'm the one to drive. And so that if the other person is a bit subtle, you seem to be querying the other party. So how does communication in marriage work between
those circumstances?
How should it work?
Well, I would say, again, I'm going to make a lot of reference to cultural elements because, you see, in the past, the whole idea of feminism, women's liberation, the place of a woman as an equal partner within the marriage context, within society, and in fact in the larger, you know, if you like, social setting or political setting, that idea did not really come to the party. Let's put it that way. Right now, things have changed tremendously. So you can see that the entire premise of relationship between couples and between male and females in society is equality. Right. That kind of patriarchal, hierarchical system of marriage that you referred to in the past, you know, a man could, you know, he's the breadwinner, he dictates what happens. Really, that has changed. And the liberation, I put liberation in quotes because really it's simply a growth in consciousness. That's how I call it. I don't necessarily think of it as a liberation, just a growth in consciousness of the awareness of the quality of these two types of human beings, because there are really fundamentally only two types of human beings, male and female. Right. And so the change in the entire cultural setup, the change in the way we think about the relationship between these two types of human beings, that's really what has changed. And communication in the past was possible, but was a different kind of communication. Right. You see, because once you have a hierarchical kind of communication, what is happening is the big boss makes the decisions, you know, he gives the orders, and then, you know, the second in command implements them along with the children and so on and so forth. But if that dynamic has changed, then of course the communication dynamic would automatically change.
Okay, why can we go?
Do you think that our reasons for getting married these days is what is leading to a lot of divorces? Because I know that there are two reasons for people getting married. One, love. I love him. He makes my body do giz, giz, giz. One. Two, he's financially okay, he can look after me. And then maybe he becomes broke. So do you think that's what is...
I would say that there were always so many different reasons for people getting married. I mean, the most important one you may be forgetting is children. And that was always very important in the past. You see, because we thought about life as a matter of continuity on earth. So if you are not going to be there, you have children, the children will continue, you know, your lineage, your line. And so that was always very important. And I think that that's still very important to us. You see, but as I said earlier, the dynamic of, okay, what is the management of the material resources? How are we going to manage these material resources? Okay, the man earns, he brings in most of the income. But don't forget that in many traditional societies, it was not just simply the man. There was simply a division of labor. Women also worked. They worked at different... I give you the example of roboculture. The men found what they call the cash crop. Okay, in my area, for instance, it was typically the palm tree. Okay, that was the center of it. And so palm nuts and palm oil, this was really the male kind of activity. But the women farmed, for instance, cassava, which was the mainstay and the main crop for, you know, daily consumption. And so it was really strictly about division of labor. So you have a situation where the many different reasons why people married, they all came together in how do you manage resources? How do you manage the procreation and generation for the next line? How do you manage some of the social relation aspects? So there were so many different reasons why people married then, and there's still very many different reasons why people marry now. It's simply that the way that the two parties manage this whole process of why are we together? What are we doing here together as you know?
Okay, I'm going to go
couple.
on a break. Professor, I know you're a professor, so it's like a lecture in your class, which I get that, it's nice. It's important that the viewers understand you. So we're going to break down this conversation a bit when we come back after the break. Stay with us, Brett. Thanks for staying with us. So we still have Professor here with us, and we're talking about marriage. And anytime we have this conversation on marriage, we always kind of say things from the female perspective. And it's important for us to have a male perspective. Do you think, whatever happened to falling in love? You know, like, There was a time we just meet a guy, you know, you're head over heels.
possible?
And does that still matter
Or is
today?
it fiction from our movies?
I think it's inevitable for people to fall in love.
Okay.
And I think as long as they're human beings on earth, people will fall in love.
Can love sustain marriages? You know,
Good question.
some people will be like, you know, we don't have chemistry, so I can't marry him. If they put chemistry, can it sustain the marriage, or do you need biology, physics, and the reality
And
that comes with it? And mathematics.
Yeah.
What exactly sustains them?
I think that's just because the nature of human beings. Love alone will not keep a marriage up. You can't live on love alone. You have to live on food. You live on sex. You live on a variety of things. Live on communication. So marriage is so many different things. And so I think it's unrealistic to expect that, you know, people will just survive only by love. Love is foundational, I agree, at least some elementary attraction between people.
Are you married?
Oh, yeah, this is my second marriage.
Second marriage?
What happened to the first one?
Baba, talk to us now. How did the first one end?
She died.
So sorry about that.
Sorry.
I thought I was in for scandal.
Yes.
About that. I'm so sorry.
We lived together for 39 years before she died. So, yeah,
So you're remarried now.
I remarried.
How did you, I mean, I hate to get into your private matters, but see, we need a bit of advice
Yes, we need the
on love.
experience.
You see, because there are lots of 40-some-year-olds, 30-some years old feeling like, you know what, I don't want to marry a widower. I don't think, maybe they are widows, or they don't know if they can find love again. Or when they marry somebody who is also somebody who's coming from a different relationship, they don't want to make the same mistakes they made in the past marriage. So how do we start remarriage? And maybe you can help us in remarrying. What are those things we should look for in remarrying?
You know, the interesting thing is each marriage is unique. You can never replicate it. First, because the personalities involved are different. And secondly, the dynamic of the relationship between the two is always different. So there's no way on earth you can replicate marriage. There are never two types of marriage in the world. They are just a unique system. So between the two, always unique.
Right.
Okay, so I would like to ask you why you decided to remarry.
Okay.
That's one. Then secondly, do you think men and women are equal in marriage?
Okay, let me address the second one first, because I think that I can more easily respond to. Yes, fundamentally, men and women are equal. There isn't any way to think about this, because if you take it from the religious point of view, he who made them male and female, and there's no distinction. Oh yeah, okay, so this one was made first or second. That kind of thing doesn't really work. So fundamentally, at every important level, men and women are equal.
Equal in what aspects? You know why I'm asking this question? Because we hear that in marriage there must be a pilot and a co-pilot. Somebody must be the one who you look up to for the final decision. Somebody must be the captain of the ship, and then the other people, you know, follow. So if you say they are equal, can two captains be in a ship?
Okay, but according to your characterization, there's a captain and then the co-captain.
Yeah, co-captain.
Pilot and the co-pilot, which means that there's always one who would take the first shot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that if you think of the marital system, because I always call it a system, not just because that's the therapeutic language, but largely because, you see, the relationship between two people is always full of that kind of dynamic. I keep using that word, but it's an important word because there's energy there and there's direction. Look at it this way. If you are in a system of two, let us say you're just friends, any kind of dyadic system, any kind of couple system, I don't mean marriage now, just two friends. Always there will be one who will say, okay, let's take this direction and has a stronger voice. Okay? Any kind of two-some relationship, you always find that kind of somebody who takes the first step and another one who is likely to follow. Conflict really comes when, they both want to take, steps at the same time. So it's always about, in this particular matter, who takes the first step. In the other matter, who takes the first step.
Oh.
So that's really, in my view, what makes for a more harmonious way of managing a twosome.
Not that the man must be the one to take the first
It's not even possible for that to happen, because in some things, the other partner would have to take the first step, and you follow.
Okay, why
So
did
it
you
doesn't
remarry,
matter
sir?
who takes the step.
Yeah, actually,
either
yeah,
way.
it doesn't. It may well be that in some, for instance, if you're thinking about childbirth and pregnancy, and it's inevitable that a woman will take the first step in this regard because she's the one who's going to bear the brunt of whatever happens in there. So
The
It's
second
always the
question.
woman that takes the first. I thought it was the man that takes the first step. Is the one that
the
initiates
seed.
the.
yeah, I'm not necessarily talking about the sexual event. I'm
Oh,
talking-
Decision making.
Event, right?
He's talking about decision making. Sir, I would like to follow up on Mo's question
He
earlier.
did answer the last one. Why
Oh,
he
let you
remarried?
answer that.
Okay.
Okay.
I want
Well, at a personal level, managing grief was very difficult for me. Yes, and then I found somebody who understood
Helped
that
you.
I was in a grieving state and I was coming out of grief and I needed to, the zest for life hasn't died yet. So
But we crucify women when they cannot manage grief and they choose to remarry. Society crucifies them for thinking of remarrying when they lose their husband.
if I were to dare to pronounce a judgment on that kind of social assessment, I think it is wrong.
That social assessment is wrong.
Yes, because, you know what to say. I'm a Christian, so I can tell you the Christian view of it.
Okay.
Which is?
It is till death do you part. And once death comes and the people are free. to remarry.
Even the women.
Even the women are free. Yes, there isn't any question about
So
that.
how long has this second marriage been?
A year now.
Oh, you still
Or let us
really
say a
love
year
them.
and a half.
Love
A
her.
younger woman or the same
Younger
age?
woman.
Younger woman. Oh, you like them,
Doing
yeah?
your body.
White kid. Let us get stupid. If you live with this woman.
Today is
look,
Thursday now.
Okay, Nima, you're going to do something. Let me come to you.
No, I was going to
Before
ask
I
exactly
scatter
what
the
BC
table.
asked, but I wanted it to be from your experience as a professor, whether you see, the society and the societal judgment around widows and how, they have to compromise sometimes. Give up entirely on another companionship relationship and focus on their children, and how exactly sustainable is it for them when it comes to their health and maybe managing
Grief.
when the kids are all grown.
People are different, Some people have a greater need for companionship, for a partner than others. You see, so if this need arises, and this need can arise not only, for instance, in terms of emotion or in terms of sexual desire, but it can arise, for instance, when it's not to certain assistance or help in managing children or in managing careers, or, because the marriage dynamic is full of so many different aspects. It's a massive institution. There's a whole management element to marriage. So some people are better able to manage alone by themselves. Others are not able to do that. It is not, I think, the right way to judge people. To say, yes, no, why don't you fall into the mold? You're a widow and therefore you must remain. I don't believe that.
But sometimes even the widows set up, they insist that, the kids must grow up first. In your case as a widower, did you wait for long? And, what is most advisable, the period?
Well, mine, of course, since I married very early, when my kids were all adults,
They're grown.
Yes, they're all adults, and therefore,
We're going to wrap up very soon because I know you're going to touch on your book in a minute. But when you said you're a Christian, it just reminded me of a question that's been in my mind for a long time: polygamy and Christianity. Because I have an uncle who's a polygamist, and he seemed to be the one to be healthiest of all my family members.
Is he a Christian?
Happy? No, he's a Muslim. He's polygamist, and he's probably the healthiest, happy, content. I mean, the guy is just flying. Every other person is just
Flexing.
flexing. And I'm thinking, is this something? Do you think we should start considering, especially those of us that are married and have monogamous relationships? And because it seems as though polygamy was accepted in the old days, and people are now beginning to think, shouldn't we reconsider? I mean, is it cast in stone that a Christian must marry one man, one wife? I know the answer biblically, but people are just thinking that realistically now, in today's times, is it possible? Do you think we should still stick to that monogamous relationship?
I think it's not possible to have your cake and eat it.
Okay.
You see, if women are interested in maintaining their agency, their independence, their autonomy in decision-making, and being equal partners with a man, this is not quite compatible with accepting, to be a second wife or a third wife and so on and so forth. Because if you take it from that elementary biblical injunction. He made them male and female. So that equality of male and female is a presumption we must work with. We have to assume that they will be equal. But if you have a kind of polygamous situation, obviously, you cannot but take a subordinate position there. And you see, and I don't think that works for the presumption of equality at all. So you really have to rethink it. You know, if you.
But her uncle, she says, is the
Okay, let's move on.
happiest
Join his life.
of all her uncles. She says is that the happiest of all her uncles. And I don't know about the wives.
Collecting from different
Yeah, I
angles.
met them.
I'm glad you added
They're very
that.
beautiful.
You don't know about the wives.
I
So
don't
that
know
the
about
wives
the
are
wives.
actually
Let's touch on your books, because I have to let you go in a minute. But
Yeah.
these books are on marriage, right?
Yeah.
It says I can't say the name.
Okay,
Meaning
so
of marriage?
the first one is
First
the meaning of marriage. It's about 10 years plus now.
Wow.
That was about
Right.
2010 that I wrote this, or rather published this. The second one, which has just come out, Witness Conversations.
That's about love and commitment
In
in couple. Okay.
communication,
Are you a love person? Do you like romance?
Can
and
I
stuff
see?
like
It's
Sounds
impossible not to be a love person. Every human being is a love
that?
No, not
What's
every
an
human
old,
being.
old man like you being
I
in
disagree
love
with you,
for?
sir. Not every human
What's
being.
an old man like you?
I'm married, don't forget. I have to be in love
How
with
do you
my
know
wife.
his old? Do you know
Otherwise,
his age?
Why? Okay, the point is that when you see a man, okay, let me say a grown man.
yeah.
You know, what do you know about romance?
A
and
grown
love?
man is from 18 years, don't forget.
Oh, because I was arguing with YK yesterday that once you are 70, you have no business doing the
You're in that
business.
Wow, I didn't know that age had anything to do with it.
Oh, shit.
Thank you. Oh, let me tell how.
Because YK,
Because she's going to be 70 one day.
she's 62 and she's still doing the do. And I'm thinking,
Well,
She has no proof that I'm doing
but she
anything.
But you're
doesn't
doing
look.
I've never told her that I'm doing
By the
anything.
way,
We know.
you
Are
don't
you
look
celibate?
62. You
Thank you.
look so
Thank
much
you very
younger.
much.
okay, what you tell us in the private, we know.
We know.
I've not told you anything.
Like,
What
you don't
do you
keep
do?
I'm sweating.
Anyway,
This is
it was
the
a
meaning
pleasure.
of marriage. You
Sorry,
are
Prof.
supposed to be asking.
Right,
Good
right.
meaning of marriage. You people that are
We're
inside
not doing
marriage.
publicity for book here. We're just telling everybody has a book. Please, we're just doing that.
You are
But
supposed to.
thank you so much, sir.
Yes,
It was a
thank
you,
pleasure
sir.
having you, because it was good for us to have I'll put maybe an academic perspective
Yes.
to this conversation, because sometimes we just talk about these things loosely, but it's good to understand that there are agencies, there are institutions, there are expectations, there are reasoning behind the way we do things, and it's good to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, please.
It was a pleasure. We'll definitely talk about your book. We'll post it and put it on social media so that people can, and
Please.
we wish you the best with your new wife.
Thank you.
Wish you
Are
the
you going
best.
to have more children?
Okay, that's
We
a
have one.
private conversation.
You have one.
Yes.
Oh, this our professor is a lover boy.
Professor, I don't trust
Professor,
you
please,
again.
how old are you? Hey, this professor is
A
a
lover boy.
lover man.
Please, I don't mind them.
Thank you. All right.
Professor, tell us your age now before.
Don't
so
mind them.
that you know you are
Please don't
home
mind them.
to
It's not
a
so.
lot of.
You're entitled to your
It's not so
privacy.
secret. It's all over in my, internet,
Okay,
in my
okay.
books.
Tell us.
Yeah, so you can tell us now for our viewers.
Well, let us say that I'm in
Old
the
enough.
seniority graph.
Hey, he's your age.
That's 70 plus.
Okay,